Welcome to my spoiler review of X-Men Days of Future Past. If you have not yet seen the movie, you can check out my non-spoiler review right here. But if you have seen the movie or don't mind spoilers, let's get started. Now I'm going to go character to character. And of course, as we all know, there are a heck of a lot of characters in X-Men Days of Future Past. So you can use the annotations here, which act as bookmarks for you to skip around or jump to the characters you're the most interested in. So much to discuss here. I'm going to break it up into past, future. We're going to talk about all the past mutants, the future mutants, then that end scene, and of course the after credits sequence. This is so exciting. To me, my X-Men, I just had so much fun with this movie. I want to hear James McAvoy say that. I don't believe he has yet. If he did, it didn't make enough of an impression. This movie was just so much fun. And you know what? As soon as it started, I felt like I was reading an X-Men comic. It really had that feel. Even the futuristic scenes had the color scheme that I remember from when I would read some of the classic, futuristic stories in the X-Men. I just think that it's just so hit the mark in terms of tone that it's just so much fun to really basically read a comic on the big screen, which is one of the things I liked about the Avengers. And also, I think Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. All of these comic book properties, and I think The Amazing Spider-Man, to be fair, in certain areas, all really recreate what it's like to read those comics, both in terms of tone and also, tone in terms of story, but also visual tone. That characters and situations look like they leapt off the page. So exciting! All right, so we're going to begin in the past. The first character I want to discuss is Mystique, because she's pretty much the only female character in the movie. As I said in my non-spoiler review, it's a little unfortunate not to have more female members because that's such a big part of the X-Men and the X-Men's fan base. But I think Mystique was a very good character, and they did so much to change her. I think we should discuss her first. All right, so all the time I say I miss Rebecca Romijn as Mystique, and to some degree I still do, because that Mystique is not this Mystique. They're not the same characters. Jennifer Lawrence is not playing a younger version of Rebecca Romijn's Mystique. That Mystique is gone. It's retired. Enjoy it for what it was while we had it. Because while Rebecca Romijn was pretty much a mute Mystique who was more lizard than human and was very self-aware of her body movements, it was almost like performance art in some ways. Like a mime, a kick-ass mime. And it worked. But that's not what Jennifer Lawrence is playing. Jennifer Lawrence is playing, and this was what was fascinating, the third member of the leaders of the mutant resistance. It's always, Professor X versus Magneto, Martin Luther King Jr. versus Malcolm X. That is not the case anymore. You have a third person. I think in the past, and I think when I talked to Simon Kinberg, he said that Mystique was torn between the two of them. But I don't think that's the case. I think that Mystique, her loyalties aren't torn. She's very much trying to forge her own path, which I think we see in the comics, a little bit even more so today. And perhaps they knew where the movies were going over at Marvel Publishing, because I think Mystique is someone who also cares very deeply about the future of the mutant race, and she just goes about it a third way. She's not as as dangerous or villainous as Magneto, but she's not as much into peace and, turn the other cheek as Professor Xavier. Mystique is more of a rogue agent. A freedom fighter, I guess I would almost say. She has more good in her than, she has an equal mix of good and bad, I think, and that this movie explores that. So Jennifer Lawrence, that Mystique was brought closer to the comics in that she has more dialogue, she's more proactive, she has her own agenda, so that reminded me a lot of the character. But then it's different because they brought her up to the level, basically, of Magneto and Charles Xavier. And I'd be very interested to see if they follow this in the comics. I actually liked it so much that I'd be open to exploring it there as well, to see it go into the regular 616 continuity. As for Jennifer Lawrence's performance herself, I've always felt she's a little uncomfortable in this role with the nudity. And I wonder if that's why this time when they shot it, you see very little of Mystique full body shots. It's always obscured by something, another character, it's a tight shot, maybe she's moving very quickly so you don't really see anything. I do not think this is a voyeuristic portrayal of Mystique. She's not on display. It's very much more about what's Mystique thinking, what's Mystique going to do, those elements, which I think I like as a female viewer. I'll be curious to see if male viewers feel they're missing out on something, and if their blue boobs itches scratched with this performance, because not a lot of blue boobs in the movie. But Jennifer Lawrence is just very different in that she's more concerned with the character of Mystique than I think she is with if Mystique looks cool. And I think that's also very noticeable. You know, again, it's not performance art, it's a performance as an actor, which is a totally different way to go, and I think it stands on its own, and I ended up really liking it. Maybe, I'm not sure if she should morph into some clothes, the traditional white dress. We'll see if that happens in X-Men Apocalypse. But I'm not sure. If Jennifer Lawrence, I don't know if she's against it or they're just trying to keep a certain rating. I don't know. But I would like to see her a little more comfortable in the role. I don't know if she's held here against her will because of her contract, but there's just something that seems a little off. But I hope she embraces it because she's very good in it. I really like her in the role. All right, so next, Magneto. All right, this is past Magneto. I'll get to future Magneto when I discuss the future characters. I thought that Michael Fassbender was so good in this movie, and as I said when I interviewed him, he sounds like Ian McKellen. He's duplicating the cadence and speech pattern of McKellen, and that was really fascinating to hear. And it just made him seem more like the younger version of the character. And Magneto has the best action sequences in the movie. Bryan Singer clearly really knows what to do with this character. I think he's the one who maybe gives him the most ideas because he has the best sequences. Sometimes I felt they were cut a little short. For instance, when he goes and gets his helmet, I was like, why can't this be a longer sequence? Because what I'm seeing is so cool. And I think that's, because the movie just has too many characters and too much to accomplish in terms of, as I said in my non-spoiler review, correcting mistakes from the previous films, that it can't really delve into the action sequences, I think, as much as it would like to. So you have great action sequences here, but they're more like hints of action sequences, shades of action sequences. Nothing quite as extensive, I think, as the ones that we see in previous Bryan Singer X-Men movies, except with The Future. The Future has some very good action sequences, which I'll get to when I discuss The Future. Now, I said some things didn't quite work out in the film, and sometimes with Magneto, that was the case. Like, for instance, I didn't understand how he can control the Sentinels just by putting metal into their infrastructure. I mean, sure, he might be able to move them around like robots, like a puppet, I guess. Like puppets, they were robots. Move them like puppets, but I don't see how he could turn them on and access their weaponry as if he had the remote control when he just had metal, coursing through very rudimentary. That would mean that Magneto has such incredible mastery of metal to the degree that I think we haven't seen ever. So that's a huge decision to make him that powerful. But it's not just a matter of power, it's a matter of understanding circuitry and electronics. I don't know, it seemed a little far-fetched to me. But the sequence where he does that with the train tracks, and then also the sequence at the end at the White House with the stadium and the Sentinels were so spectacular that I kind of forgave the nonsense of how they made it happen. I hope going forward, though, they watch that a little bit, because if they do that too much, it'll take you out of the movie. Speaking of that end sequence at the White House, this was the Magneto from the comics. This was the one that was a threat. And I really like the fact that they tried to keep still Magneto as like a close friend of Charles Xavier, but they still underlined that he was dangerous. For instance, he said, we have to kill Mystique to save us and protect us. I'm sorry, it's a sacrifice for the cause. I'm sure she understands. She did not understand. And I thought that was great. I think that really underlined the differences between Mystique, Charles Xavier, and Eric Lehnsherr. And I really like that they took Magneto there. I like that for once, finally, he wasn't just like, oh, he's deep down, he's really nice. He went too far. He was dangerous. And I actually, to the point where I questioned whether or not Charles Xavier should have let him go at the end. He's like, they'll persecute me, Charles. I'm like, you just killed a bunch of people, Eric. I'm sorry. You need to go back down to the Pentagon. I like that sequence quite a bit. I'll get to that in a moment. Let's go to Charles Xavier, the third member of our three mutant leaders. I think James McAvoy is very good in this role. I think he really came more into it this time. I think that giving him the personal drama, the most personal arc, really worked. I guess, to be fair, Mystique and Magneto also had good personal arcs. These three really did travel together. They've really been solidified as a trio. And I thought that James McAvoy was fantastic. I really liked it. He showed a lot of heart, and I think he did a good job showing the struggle. I think that Patrick Stewart, to some degree, has always played a perfect character. The guy, the mentor, who everyone goes to, who has all the answers. And I think it's a little bit more interesting to watch him try and find those answers himself, which this movie does. Of course, poor James McAvoy, he doesn't have the cool power set that everybody else does, but again, I liked when he was using other characters to speak to Mystique, some of the tricks that I think Bryan Singer used in his first two X-Men films to make Professor Xavier pop a little bit more in terms of his power set. But I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. I think that him being able to walk because of the drug that took away his mutant power was a little bit convenient, and I think it just really was an excuse for them to find a way for him to walk, but they're like, but let's make it an impossible choice. And I think that we all knew it wasn't an impossible choice, that he was going to be back in that chair by the end of the movie, and he was. All right, so Charles Xavier. So we've done our trio. Let's go to Wolverine, our time traveler. I think Hugh Jackman is really good in the role. As I said in my non-spoiler review, he, to some degree, is Bryan Singer's X-Men. He is the foundation of it. And he just stepped right back into the role, like a glove. He was so incredibly good. I was so impressed. I felt like he never missed a movie. He came right out of X2. He looks exactly the same. He hasn't aged a day. And I like that they had some Wolverine elements here. I loved when he had like the bullet holes in him when he was fighting those guys and the bone claws. It was just classic Wolverine. Again, moving a little bit closer to the comics like all these characters are doing. I liked that. I appreciated it. And I can see why they chose Wolverine to be the character that we went with. Because while Kitty Pryde is the one who did it in the comics, unfortunately, not anything against Ellen Page, but I think it's more has to do with the writing and just the circumstances of how the franchise has evolved. We just aren't as emotionally attached to her. And I think that when she went back in time in the original comic book story, we'd already really gotten to know her as a new member of the X-Men. She was a character, she was the protagonist. She was us joining the X-Men for the first time, and that's why it worked to send her back at that point. But that's not the case with the movies, and so I think that Hugh Jackman was a great choice to send back. He did a great job. He was good with the action sequences, the humor. I mean, he's just a true professional, not only promoting this movie, as you've seen from my coverage, but in the role. He knows what this movie needs, and I really thought he did a great job. I really liked him a lot in the role. I have to say, though, at the end of the movie, I didn't understand how he didn't die, because Wolverine can drown, so I don't understand how he survived. But he did. That's nice. And I thought it was very interesting that they had Mystique being William Stryker. And some people have said, well, maybe this will mean he'll never go into the Weapon X program. This opens some very interesting doors. I mean, there are a lot of new possibilities that I think people want to see, but now there are possibilities that we never even imagined would exist. So it'll be interesting to see how Singer deals with that. If he actually, utilizes these possibilities, or if perhaps they're just too much of a Pandora's box to change that much. But Hugh Jackman, great. All right, next, Quicksilver. Really good job with Quicksilver. Evan Peters, poor guy, took such a beating going into this movie, but he really delivers. I thought he was so good in the role, and he was understated. The costume and the Carl's Jr. ad seemed very over the top. But those are like the most over-the-top elements. Whoever directed that Carl's Jr. ad, boy, I wouldn't advocate anyone being fired off of a one-time thing, but he did a lot of damage to this character going into the film. He or she, whoever directed that. But I think once people see the movie, it'll be corrected. Now, I heard someone say that Kinberg is going to say there'll be more. Simon Kinberg's the writer and co-producer of the film, but there'll be Quicksilver going forward. And I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. Evan Peters was great. He had that scene where he smiles at Magneto through the glass was just really good. He was a different kind of energy for the movie. I think that was great. The very much the trickster, the speedster trickster, and they utilized that really well. And also he had a little bit of a naivete about him, about like, what's this for? Oh, my mom knew someone who used to be able to manipulate metal. I thought that was great. That was really well done, and I would like to see more of him. And his action sequence was very good. It was very creative. I have to say though, to be honest, I would have preferred more action sequences, and maybe that would have been a little shorter. That was really by far and away the piece de resistance of the movie in terms of action sequences. And while it was very clever and humorous to watch, I would have preferred a little, maybe to shorten it, maybe by about a couple minutes, and then maybe make some of the Magneto action sequences, or give Mystique some better action sequences. Those two characters are my favorite, and I feel that they were shortchanged just a little bit. I would have liked to see a little bit more with them. But Quicksilver, really good role. I think Aaron Taylor-Johnson has a little bit of a hurdle now. I hope he doesn't trip over it. All right, so next, Beast. I like Nicholas Hoult a lot. I think he's a great actor. I really liked him in Warm Bodies. He just honestly doesn't have a lot to do here, except to be someone for Charles Xavier to talk to. He's like, well, we can't have him talking to himself, but maybe you could have. I don't know. And it's not Nicholas Holt's fault. I think he's just a casualty of there being too many characters in the movie. But he did a good job with what he had. And for instance, like they tried to, revisit him having an attraction to Mystique, but it really wasn't there. It wasn't necessary. Mystique certainly didn't notice. So I think that if it wasn't going to be recognized on the other side, it was really more for them just to reference it out of respect to X-Men First Class, or I guess for continuity's sake. But he didn't need to be there. He didn't really have anything to do, except I guess invent that serum that, gave Xavier that impossible choice. But, Holt's always, he's always nice to have around. He added to the pretty boy contingent here. Just another good looking face. And I think he's pretty good with comedy, which is unusual for, matinee idol-looking actors. I think he's more of a comedian and a character actor than he is a leading man, so it'll be interesting to see how he works with that going forward with his career. By the way, he's very good in Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack the Giant Slayer, that Bryan Singer film. That's actually a pretty good movie. They got a bum rap. It's definitely worth renting. All right, so Bolivar Trask, our last member of the past. I have to say, not a lot going on here. I think that Peter Dinklage, of course, does a very nice job. He's a great actor, and the character needs to exist, obviously, to be the big bad. But the big bad ends up being Magneto, and I think that Bolivar Trask is really a secondary character. He's more like the senator in the X1, that Mystique took over for. That's kind of what the level that he's in, and that feels a little bit of a waste to me of Peter Dinklage. I also have to say that a lot of people said that it was wonderful that they weren't addressing the fact that Peter Dinklage is a little person and that he was just playing Bolivar Trask like anyone else. And while I think that that's important that Peter Dinklage get those kind of roles because he's a great actor, very personable, he has a huge fan base now thanks to Game of Thrones, and he's really killing it on Game of Thrones right now, by the way. His courtroom scene and his scenes in his cell have just been phenomenal. But in a movie like this, where it talks about people being different and not accepted for who they are, I don't understand how nobody brought up that Bolivar Trask was a little person. It makes no sense. I don't understand. I mean, when you're at Senate hearings, they really, they go for headlines. They go to get attention for themselves when they're questioning you. So I can't believe that not a single senator said, Trask, I'm really surprised you're persecuting these mutants considering your own situation. And I just think that it was a glaring missed opportunity on the part of the film, and that again, while it would be great to see Peter Dinklage get a role where his size wasn't an issue, I think here it actually was a disservice to him in the role because that was the case. It's the reality of the situation, and you're better off to embrace it than to just have kind of a glaring omission. That's my personal perspective of it. All right, so let's move to the future. I can't really separate anybody out here because nobody really had anything to do in the future that was character building. The great thing about the future sequences was that this is what delivered the action. There was a lot of talking in the past, and there were abbreviated action sequences with the exception of the Quicksilver scene, but the future delivered the action. It delivered the menace. It was another big looming threat over the movie. And that's why I liked these sequences, because they were the X-Men working as a team, using their powers together, and that was really fun to watch. Very good special effects. Iceman sometimes looked a little bit fake, same with Sunspot, but overall Blink's special effects looked phenomenal. Halle Berry did a good job as Storm. Luckily, she didn't have much to say or much to do, but I think she sold the power set very well. She looked like she was wielding the weather and the lightning, and it was cool. Also, her death I thought was pretty awesome, the way she tumbled over the cliff and you could see the Sentinels climbing up the side of the mountain. That was awesome. I think it wasn't made clear enough what Warpath can do. I think people would be like, how come he can hear the Sentinels coming? Warpath basically has really heightened senses. Bishop, again, cool, but he didn't have much to do. Really what you saw here was a great display of powers, individually and working together, and of course, the violence. These characters killed again and again and again, and that was a really great idea to create this time loop so Bryan Singer could go there. And I had fun watching it. I enjoyed it. You got the ice slide, etc. So I like that a lot. The only problem here I had was Kitty Pryde being able to send people back in time. It made no sense with her power set. They didn't even talk about secondary mutations. It just came out of nowhere. And it was, I think, the biggest glaring problem with the film. You were just like, why can Kitty Pryde do that? That makes no sense. She's not even moving people through timelines, like she moves people through walls. They didn't even try and float that idea. They were just like, look what Kitty can do. And also, they never explained how she discovered she could do it. It would have been neat to have maybe like a prologue or some kind of flashback sequence where she said, and then one day I just woke up in another time and I was like, a couple days earlier, and I was like, what happened? I phased through a wall, and maybe when I came out the other side of the wall, I was a couple days earlier. That would have been kind of cool. And maybe that would have been a better way to do it when they're falling through time rather than, like the way she hurtled through space in that Bullet in Joss Whedon's run, than just having her have this weird light thing on people's heads. The whole thing, I didn't quite get it. All right, so let's move on to the ending. Oh my gosh, when he came back, when he woke up and he was back in the school, I was like, no, are they going to do that? and they did. And it was like Christmas morning, and that's how much we miss these characters. I wasn't aware how much I missed them until I saw them come back. Even James Marsden as Cyclops. And I've been talking a lot about how I want to see more Cyclops, but I think that role needs to be recast. James Marsden, great guy, took a lot of heat with this. He stuck with it though, but I just don't think he has the qualities that Cyclops needs to have. I just don't see it in him, and especially to compete with Hugh Jackman, as Cyclops needs to be able to do. But it was great to see Jean Grey back. I'm so excited to have that character back. There's so much missed potential with her, missed opportunities, that I can't wait to see what they can do with her now. And I love the thing where he went to touch Jean Grey and Cyclops was like, "What are you doing, buddy?" And he's like, "Oh, the more things stay the same." And I thought that was great because it was so true. It was right out of X1 and X2, and I loved it. So amazing. Great sequence. Now, also, after credit sequence. I loved this. I thought that Apocalypse looked phenomenal. I loved that it looked like it was a Middle Eastern or Egyptian actor. I thought that was crucial. That was something we were all wondering about. This might be like Thanos. Is this the guy playing Apocalypse, or will we meet him when he's a little older? But I have to say, I liked him being younger because pharaohs from Egypt often were young. And so I thought that played into the time period very well. I thought the pyramid building at first threw me, but of course I have an episode, you can get a link here at the end, which talks about X-Men Apocalypse and all the details. So I figured out some ways that maybe they can make that work, but I haven't seen Apocalypse ever do that in the comics, really. I guess he did it maybe before the X-Men showed up, so this is him building his lair. But the idea that Apocalypse created the pyramids is a pretty interesting idea. So he looked cool. I liked the sequence. I thought it introduced him with the appropriate grandeur, considering how crucial he's going to be going forward to the next movie. And I love that quick last shot of the Horsemen. I think the Horsemen are going to be a very big deal in X-Men Apocalypse because, as I point out in this video that I hope you'll check out, both Wolverine and Gambit, and Archangel, but two characters that we know are going to be in Apocalypse, Wolverine and Gambit, Channing Tatum, aka, were Horsemen of Apocalypse. They both served as Death. So expect those to come into play big time. And of course, also to bring the action sequences. So that's my spoiler review of X-Men Days of Future Past. I'm very curious to see what you guys think of it, if you like it as much as I do. I think Fox is back on the map thanks to this movie and competing in the superhero arena. I hope they can do this good a job with Fantastic Four. We'll see. But this is even trickier because this wasn't a reboot. This was a course correct. And I think that Singer and company pulled it off. And I guess I have to speak to that very quickly. I don't know about the accusations. I don't know what the truth is. They're so serious that I think we have to wait to see what is decided. But I would say that to lose Singer from this franchise would be quite the loss for the franchise and for Fox. So, of course, I hope that he did not do those things just because they're so horrendous and so unnecessary. But there are plenty of guys in Hollywood, Singer, who want to be in movies that are the appropriate age. But also, it would really hurt the movies going forward, I think. All right, so that's my review. Write your thoughts down below, and you can check out some more episodes right now.